Okay, so this lecture is titled How to Debate or How to Improve a Debate Exponentially. My name is Rhee. I am a rising senior at Little Rock Central High School. So let's talk about failure. I assume all of you have lost a debate before. If you're not, you're probably in the wrong place. So I want to give you a hypothetical situation. You had big expectations for a tournament. You thought you would do well. You thought that maybe you would even get into the deep elans. But your tournament did not go as planned. You went 3-4, you did not break, and you were extremely mad after said tournament. So I have this hypothetical, and I wonder who this person could be. So after said tournament, there's a lot of anger in you. You feel pent up, and then you throw some stuff across your room. You sulk in your room for the rest of the day. Has anyone else been in this kind of position? If not, that's okay. But we want to figure out, how did we get here in the first place? So now we have to ask ourselves, where do we go from the premise that we failed what our original goal was? So you could take a break from debate, i.e. you could maybe not go to the next tournament, or you could just distance yourself for a week from doing debate work entirely. Number two, you could focus on your schoolwork, maybe studying for a test that you were putting off because you were doing a lot of debate work. You could sit in your room depressed. I've definitely done this before. You didn't have, just like any motivation to do a lot of things. You were sad about the outcome and you felt like you didn't do enough. You could play video games. This is a common stress reliever in many senses of the sort, regardless of what happened. And you could blast sad music and make your profile picture a Bart Simpson edit. All right, so, but why would we do these things? Why are we relieving our stress? Why are we even mad at the result of the tournament? First, why are you trying to improve a debate? What do you like out of debate? I want this to be a pretty open discussion, given that I don't know all of you. I don't know what your goals are out of debate, and I'm actually very interested to hear. So what makes you want to do debate or be better at debate? You can type in the chat, you can tell me verbally, but I just want to know, at least from one or two people, what is the reason why you do debate and what is the reason why you want to improve at debate? Because for most of you, you came to this lecture because you wanted to learn how to improve at debate. So I want to hear why. Why do you like to improve at debate, or why do you like debate in general?
I'm good at it and I win and I like to win.
Okay.
I'd kind of put it like this. If there was no like winners in debate, I probably wouldn't do it.
Okay, interesting. So competitive aspects, and you like the feeling of winning. That is actually a very common response. I think that's very valid. Why a lot of people like debating is that they like to win. So are there other aspects of debate that you also enjoy, or is, I understand that that's probably the main reason, but are there other aspects that you like about debate? Is it like just winning to you, or what is it?
I mean, it's kind of like tea. It's like everything is like an internal link to winning. Like I like, you know, the community I make. Well, that's because I won, right? If I lost every single time, people wouldn't know me as well.
Okay,
I like
interesting.
the, like aggression of it, but like I like the tensions, because debate can get really heated,
Okay.
but it only ever matters if you win, right? Like to me, everything's an internal link to like winning.
Okay, interesting. That's certainly one opinion, and I think a lot of people also have similar opinions to that. Okay, let's see what other people are saying. So Joy says, to improve my skills, i.e. speaking and critical thinking. Okay, this is also a very valid answer. A lot of people also think that debate is good for increasing your skills and critical thinking. I certainly think that over the course of my high school career, from when I was a freshman, I'm way better at articulating what I mean, what I think about something, and defending it. So this is definitely true for most people. Carly also says public speaking skills. Okay, so pretty similar. Maybe you have like a fear of speaking in public spaces, but now it might be reduced. These are all valid reasons for why you would want to improve at debate or why you find value in debate. Okay, so there's a bunch of reasons that I've listed on the screen, i.e. recognition, your resume, your parents want you to do good at debate for any particular reason. It's maybe your personal enjoyment, i.e. you just like the heat and the thrill of debate, or maybe it's just something else, like all of the stuff about like critical thinking, maybe all of the stuff about how you have friends in debate, or you like the social aspects of going on trips, those kinds of things. Okay, Cece says, I liked debate my freshman year, and now 2 years in it, I guess I just really like being stressed out every Saturday until like January. Okay, this is very interesting. So I think a lot of the times in our community, there's people who are voluntarily taking on debate as an activity, and we don't really sort of question why we're doing it. And a lot of the times there's like a lot of stress involved with, am I going to win this debate? Am I going to do well at this tournament? Will I become recognized by my coaches? Will other people recognize me as a good team? And that sort of creates a feeling of stress. So I want to take that aspect out of it for a second and sort of tell you why improving at debate does not have to be formed around stress. Okay, so now that we know why we wanted to do debate, or why we wanted to improve at debate, how should we improve at debate? So first, specificity. You need to know where you want to be with specific goals and a specific process. This does not mean that I want you to tell me, I want to go undefeated at this tournament, but I want you to tell me what things it is that you want to improve specifically, i.e., I want to become fast enough to read 7 off every debate. I want to become good enough that the 2AR spin will always beat the K. I want to become good enough at winning that cap is unsustainable in every single debate. Those are specific goals that don't rely on, hey, this is the external factors that only I can control. These things are all things that you can control. Becoming fast enough to read 7 off, becoming good at 2AR spin to beat the K. These are all achievable things that aren't like, hey, I want to go undefeated at the Tournament of Champions. I want to become the champion of this state tournament or this local circuit tournament, because there are external factors that you can't always control. Second, communication. Debate is a communicative activity, and you have to have discussions with all of your people. That means your coaches, that means your partner, that means your judges. All of these people have different opinions than you, and it's really important to get a second opinion, and most of the time a third and fourth opinion of what you're doing, what you can improve, and how you should do so. All of these things are really crucial to figuring out how should I improve and what should I improve. Okay, so what about knowledge? If you don't know anything about anything, what should I do to increase my knowledge if I already have the skills to do these things? First, I would say you should absorb YouTube videos. A lot of the resources that we have on our playlist on our YouTube channel should help you get a sort of better understanding of certain debate arguments, how to go for certain debate arguments, and what the core assumptions behind those are. Those are all great resources, and I think you should watch a lot of those videos, particularly the ones that you're interested in. Second, that is important for how to absorb all these YouTube videos is you should be watching debate rounds. Debate rounds are the best resources you have to figure out strategic vision, how people have gone for certain arguments in the past, how they explain those arguments, to all develop a better understanding of what is this argument, how can I become better at it, or how can I become better at answering it, and who are the best people who have done this in the past that I can look up to and model my arguments about. Second, I would say you should read the full text of articles and books. Every piece of evidence in debate comes from somewhere. This means you need context to what the assumptions behind their articles and pieces of scholarly literature that they wrote behind, i.e., if a person wrote an article about how China war is inevitable, you need to know the assumptions that they made behind those things to figure out that China war was inevitable, or maybe even if they conclude the other way. Reading the conclusion and the abstract of the article at the very least is super important for both developing your argumentation and also figuring out the conclusions that their articles actually say, because most people don't actually read their articles. At the very least, this means you should know your own stuff. It means in your 1AC evidence, you should have at least read the entire cards unhighlighted, the parts that are underlined for good reason. You need to figure out, what does this say And why is this either detrimental to the AF or beneficial to the AF? Reading at least the full 1AC, no highlighting, and all text is important. And same with common disads you read, common critiques you read, common topicality arguments you read. You need to be reading the articles. Third, I would say at least you should ask people more knowledgeable than you. By this, I do not mean ask this kid you are friends with across the country that is a year older than you and has been doing debate for just 1 year more than you. What I mean by this is people that are experts at what they do. I mean people who have run this argument for their entire debate career. I mean coaches who have coached this argument for their entire career. I mean people even who have written the articles that go into these arguments behind these things, i.e., all the stuff that John said in his lecture about research, about what should we do and how should we research it, is important to how you develop and become a more knowledgeable debater. Knowing the technical language and the specific details of the assumptions people made behind making these arguments is super, super important to becoming a knowledgeable debater. All right, I know that was a lot, but now we're going to talk about strategy. So debate, because of, what people say about its competitive incentives and the structure of it, everyone needs to have a strategy, right? Everyone does have a strategy. It's just a question of whether that's good or bad. And of course, there are varying degrees to it. So the same way that you find your own flaws, you need to find flaws that become patterns in teams that you want to beat, patterns in teams that you see on your circuit commonly, etc. So how do you do this? How do you develop your strategy? I would say the first thing you need to do is a holistic review. What I mean by this is after every tournament, take 1 day off. And then after that day, you should be doing a review of everything that happened in that tournament, from round 1 to the last round you debated and every speech that happened in that debate. I want you then to identify common trends. What arguments did you like to go for? What arguments did opponents go for against your most common arguments? And what flaws did you make in the most common arguments you had that may have lost you the debate or didn't affect you in that debate? Then I want you to do an individual review of the rounds, i.e., is there an outlier from these trends? Is there something that you did that you do not normally do? Is there something that other teams did that they don't normally do against your affirmative? You need to figure out what is the most important trends, the least important trends, and something that's completely outlier to all of those things, so you can figure out what is the best argument that people had that I was unexpected for? What was the best argument people had that I was already expected for and should have prepared in advance, so that you can develop your strategy as such. Afterwards, you do this, you need to see how satisfied you are with the result of the tournament. I.e., if you went 5-2, are you satisfied with that result? Do you think you could have gone 6-1 if you had made a couple of changes? If that's the case, you need to develop an idea of what it is that you disliked about the thing that you think could have made you go 6-1, or could have made you go from 4-3 to 5-2. That is the important part of this review. Okay, after that, you need to use that to build your strategy. What did you do wrong? I.e., in every debate, if you read the same argument and people made the same argument against you, but you still lost every round, either the argument you're making is wrong or bad, or your answers to their arguments that were very common were just wrong or bad in that sense. And thus you need to come up and develop with a better argument to answer the most common arguments that people make against you. All right, what about speech? Speech is all about routine. I cannot stress this enough. Routine is the king of debate. In the context of speech, you must have a routine. Speaking drills every day. And what I mean by this, I literally mean every day. However, this does not mean you have to do speaking drills for 30 minutes every day. It also does not mean it has to be an hour, anything above that. It does mean you do have to spread at least once every day, or at least do 1 or 2 drills every day. Building the consistency to do these drills will make you so much better. I remember a period of time where I took a month break in between my last tournament and then the next tournament. The first 2 rounds, my speaks were about a point lower than on average. So it's both that it's detrimental, but also that you're literally improving every time you do these drills. And so even if it's just a 3-minute pen and mouth drill, even if it's just 5 minutes of spreading a day, those things are super important and they do add up. Maybe in the car, if you have time, you should do a drill if your parents don't become too annoyed. Or maybe if you're in the shower, you can start spreading spontaneously. Those things are all important, but it can just also be as simple as I wake up and I do a 5-minute speech straight up, go back to bed for another 10 minutes, and then get ready for school. Those things are super important to developing a good routine. Second, redos. This is self-explanatory, but if you don't know what a redo is, it's to do a speech that you had at a tournament or practice round before and do it over again, except with you have fixed the flaws. Sorry. You do need to do this more than you think, actually. It's not just for rounds that you've lost, but rounds that you've nearly lost or even won that had flaws in it, because you're striving to make your speeches better so that mistakes don't happen in the future. How do you spread in the shower waterproof laptops? Oh, well, one thing that I do is that I do a 1-minute spreading drill off the top of my head. So I think of any word that I can say. And this is kind of hard, but it's kind of a way to build your mental capacity. Another way you can do it is you can just have your phone and like not put it in the shower, but right outside. Okay. Anyways, back to redos. What should you do for redos, not just after rounds you've lost? This means that honestly, you shouldn't take that much time to prepare a redo. You should already have the feedback from the rounds that you had and figure out what were the core flaws, and then how could I fix it? And then you should take around the same amount of prep time that you had for that speech, just with the knowledge of how to prove it, and then you should record it and listen to it over to see if you made the same flaws or there were even something to do. Sometimes it's important to do one speech over again 3 or 4 times. And this is hard. It is grueling. It takes a long amount of time, but trust me, the returns are so worth it, because then you start to develop a tack for understanding and identifying correctly what the wrong arguments you made were. Okay, next is pre-dos. I want you to pre-do almost every possible scenario. At least, if you don't have time, do pre-dos for the most possible scenario. And so what I mean by this is, if you read the cap K every round, and you know teams love going for cap good in the 1AR, I want you to pre-do the 2NR to cap good and extend the warrants from your 2NC evidence that says cap is bad, i.e., maybe the 1AR had a warrant on why cap was sustainable, and you should have you should do a pre-do of your 2NR with an extension of your 2NC evidence that says capitalism is not sustainable. Those kinds of things are important to develop the 2NR before you even give the 2NR to the most common speeches. And then you already know what you need to do, and you've prevented another flaw in your speech before it happened. Okay, the last thing I would say about speech drills is you need to time your blocks. I mean this so sincerely. I mean the 2AC overview, I mean the 2NC overview. These things need to be timed. However, you should not go full speed through these. Do not time your blocks as if you're reading it as a card. Blocks are not cards, and judges will not get all the words that you're saying. You need to slow down at least a little bit when you're spreading your blocks. Time it and figure out how much time you have for the rest of your speech, at least for the essential blocks, like the 2AC overview, 2NC overview, even the 1AR overview. Okay. Now, I have a bunch of disclaimers because this advice is all contingent on a couple of things. Disclaimer number 1 is that exponential growth requires input. If you know anything about math, it's that an exponential growth goes like this, but that still requires an input for it to grow upward very quickly. So debate is almost always determined by you in every sense. So when you enter a debate round, you have to enter with the assumption that you're on an equal playing field, even if you're not, i.e. the judge might be bad for you and a little better for your opponent. You might have less resources than your other team than your opponents or another team from another school. You might have a bunch of different things that are going on in your life that affect your ability to debate. But if you do not come with the assumption that you have an equal chance, you are disadvantaging yourself in advance. If you tilt the field in their favor in advance, that is bad because you are not being the most prepared you could be. I.e., if you are not satisfied with the amount of preparation that you did to say, I feel confident that I'm on an equal playing field given the amount of preparation that I did, you are doing yourself a disfavor. This doesn't mean you have to always do this, but if you're doing yourself a disfavor and you don't want to do that, you should be able to say to yourself confidently that I've done enough prep that I feel like even all the things and other factors that come into every single debate, I feel as though I have enough to where I'm on an equal playing field with whatever argument, with whatever coaches, whatever team that they have. Cool. Disclaimer number 2 is that results will vary. I, Joseph Rhee, am not responsible for how successful you may or may not be at debate or how much you do in the debate round, what speaker you get, etc. There's a bunch of factors, like I said, like money, coaches, general disparities in debate, bad judges, that may prevent you from a goal like, I want to win the Woodward tournament, or I want to win the Tournament of Champions. No matter how much you improve, you can't always understand what went into a decision. You can't always check back against a team having 10 more coaches than you, and that's okay. So then what should you think about? You should think about, I want to be the best version of a debater that I could be. I want to be the most prepared version of the debater that I can be. This is a better burden for you to put on yourself than to say, I want to win X tournament, because there's not factors that you can control all the time in the outcome of a tournament. But there are factors that you can control in how hard you worked and how much you felt prepared for that tournament, which is the most important part about how you develop improvement for yourself. So if you have one takeaway from this lecture, I just want you to know it's that debate should be an activity for more than just winning for you. And I'll explain more on this later, but that is the core takeaway, that debate and improvement at debate should be much more than just winning for you, because you cannot control everything that goes into winning. So you should improve not for the purpose of winning, but to say you're the best version of the debater that you know you can be. And only you can say that. No one else can tell you you've developed into the best debater you can be, because they don't know the capabilities that you have. Only you do. They don't know your personal situation. They don't know your personal motivation, how hard you worked. That is the most important part, to say to yourself confidently that I'm the best version of the debater that I could be. All right, cool. Disclaimer number 3 is that improvement, like debate, is very, very hard. For instance, it's not easy to get from a 10th grader breaking at just a couple tournaments to instant TOC qualified team as a junior. That is very difficult. Very, very few people have actually done this. But it's also not easy to put in the work to get there. It's not easy to do speaking drills every day. It's not easy to cut a couple of cards a week every time. It's not easy to sacrifice aspects of your social life. But you should remember what you said when you said your goals and what you enjoyed about debate. You should not sacrifice the more important things like your sleep, your mental health, your relationships with your friends, your family, your parents, and maybe even schoolwork if that's a big priority to you. Although it's important, it's not as important as some of these things. And let me tell you this after being a senior who has already sacrificed so much of these things, and I have so many regrets, both with COVID and with all the other stuff that I did before. Not making more friends when I could have, not spending more times with my friends when I had just cut cards that didn't do a lot. I can say some of those things I could have cut out, and I could still be the best version of the debater that I wanted to be. But you should still determine, what are my values? What do I understand about debate? And what do I understand about my life? And how do I trade off between improving myself and improving myself in debate specifically? There is a trade-off because you have a limited amount of time, and you will lose a little of that if you improve at debate at all or invest any time in debate at all. But it's about degrees, people. It's about how much do you want? How much are you willing to give up? And if you're willing to give up a lot of that, that's good too. But you shouldn't give up it all, certainly. You should never neglect your mental health only for the sake of being a better debater. All right. Lastly is that debate is an equation. What I mean by this is that we have inputs to the outcome of debates. So inputs to debates are your preparation, how many speech redos you did, how many speaking drills you did, how many blocks you wrote, how many cards you cut, what files you had put together, those kinds of things. Your situation, i.e. your financial situation, how much support mechanisms you both have at home or as coaches, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And lastly, I would say your attitude. If you're already discounting yourself in advance, like I said, you're disfavoring yourself from the beginning, and you're actually going to have a negative connotation about yourself going into the round, which is the worst thing because you're the only person who can stick up for yourself. The outputs is the friends and relationships you have and maintain, i.e. all the people you know will be negatively affected if you think that you are a failure because you didn't get to the quarters of this tournament, or you're a failure because you didn't reach the goal that you originally intended for your season. Additionally, outputs obviously is the results of tournaments. I think, honestly, my attitude was one of the biggest things that affected the results of tournaments. And the way to improve, in particular, that is just come in with the attitude that you're not worse than anyone there, but it's only as much as you think that it can be. And certainly things like preparation matter, but this is at least a slight edge that can improve maybe one debate or maybe a couple of debates, depending on how you interact with both your partner, who is a human being, and you have to be nice to, and you have to realize that they have feelings, and you can't both be a jerk to them, or you can't be down and then it also affects them, which will then affect the outcomes of your debates. I'm not saying that happens in every debate, but it does happen in some. And so you should think about that when you're understanding how am I doing this for the outcome. And certainly, like I said, prep has an effect on that. Your mental health. And I can attest to this a lot. I had a lot of feelings of I'm not good enough. I don't have self-worth because I didn't get to this tournament. And I'm just going to work so hard that I get to where I want to be, and then I'll be happy. Let me tell you, I got to where I wanted to be in a lot of cases. I got to the bid round of multiple tournaments. I got to the tournament of champions. I got to where I wanted to be. That was some of my goals. But then when I got there, I realized I wasn't as happy as I originally intended or originally thought, because it wasn't the result that mattered. It was, did I actually care about myself enough to improve for my own sake? Or was I just improving because I wanted a goal that I thought was elusive? That's the important part about understanding what improvement really means to you and to other people. So the results you want. Since improvement is what about what comes from that improvement, what is the result that you want? You should not focus on the most obvious benefit, which is that you can win more debates by improving at debate. Instead, you should really think about the potential positive effects this has outside of your immediate life. Debate may just be a competitive activity to you. It also may be a competitive activity to a lot of people, but it also has these externalities on your life that you may not have considered before. And if you did, maybe you should consider it a little more. You might be more motivated. You might be more happy in general, or you might start following a routine about how do I want to work? How do I want to interact with other people? And even if this was one thing for me, is that I was more motivated to finish my schoolwork because I wanted to be a better debater. I wanted to be the person that I knew I could be, that I had the potential to be. And I don't think I've even reached that potential right now. So I'm not 100% satisfied. But it's not to say that you should do that at the expense of all these other potential benefits, like becoming a better researcher, becoming a more ethical individual, becoming someone who interacts with people better on a team, speaking more, kindly to your partner. And as such, then maybe you speak more kindly to people you work with in the future. That is all an important benefit of debate that you need to learn. But that does come from improvement. It does come from the fact that you have learned all these things from these different debates. You've also learned through the process of it, cutting cards, collaborating with your partner on developing strategies. All of these things are important and integral to your life. If you can say that debate has shaped the way that you have at least attended high school or gone about your work, then I can tell you that debate will have a much bigger effect if you take it seriously. All right. last couple of slides, and then I'm going to be open for a discussion with what all of you want to hear or whatever it is, questions, etc. So do it for the reason that you want, but you shouldn't be too selfish about it. It's totally okay to want to win trophies. That is totally fine. I know a ton of people who like to do that, and that's an okay goal. Wanting to be successful, there's nothing wrong with that. But whether or not you do it for this prestige, your resume, your recognition, or all of the other reasons that people do debate, it's fine. But you should make your improvement still based on you, i.e., regardless of the outcome that you desire from debate, you want to make yourself better at that thing. And so what that means is that even if it's just that you improved at getting the W better, it's also that you improved at being a person. Maybe you improved at being a harder worker. Maybe you improved at being more sociable. So do it with the goal you have in mind, but just don't be solely focused on that one goal and enjoy the process a little bit. So this does vary, but I'm going to go a little philosophical on you all. What you want out of life may not be abundantly clear to you right now. Growth, debate, all of these things all change over time, and your opinion might also change on this in the future. So what I hope for you all to learn is that you use your learning experience to be a better person while also using debate as a mechanism to achieve the goals that you have. At the very least, what I feel debate does is that it brings people a huge sense of community while also being a good activity to learn from other people that you have not heard of before. This also means that regardless of the goals you have in mind, you should use debate as both a site to achieve the goals you want in life and in debate broadly. All right, so this is my last slide. It is okay to celebrate. When you actually have the results that you wanted, or maybe even not the ones that you did want, but still something good, it's totally fine to be proud. And you should. You shouldn't flex too hard, but you should just celebrate your accomplishments. Even if you're not the champion of the tournament or a top 3 speaker, getting to the quarterfinals or getting to the octafinals or even the doubles or getting a top 20 speaker, these are all things to celebrate. You should be proud of yourself to enjoy the fruits of your labor as long as you don't let it define who you are. The number 20th speaker at the Meadows tournament in 2022 does not define who you are or can't be, just as much as the last speaker of the Meadows Invitational of 2022 does not influence who you are or should be. It's okay to celebrate the little things and then use that as motivation for, I want to feel more of this. Even if it's just a little bit of serotonin or just a little bit of, I feel good that this thing happened to me, it is okay to celebrate. The last thing that I want to leave you all with is that you should trust the process. What I mean by this is that regardless of what happens in your debate career, not all of you are going to become a TOC champion. And that's okay. That may not be your goal. That may not even be something you want. But it's important to realize that there's so many people out there who do debate. There's so many people who comprise this large thing we call the debate community. And there's so many people who want to win. But that doesn't mean that you have to be a person who's always striving to win and then will wreck your mental health whenever you catch an L. That makes debate what people say when they say, oh, debate is becoming a survival strategy, which is violent. You shouldn't do that to yourself. It's worse on your mental health and probably worse on other people. But what you should do is trust in yourself that you can become the debater that you want. You can achieve the goals that you want. And confidence is the first step to realizing this is how I can improve. This is how I know I can do these things. You shouldn't get overconfident, but you should trust in yourself. No one else is going to do it for you. And so if it's really about personal improvement, if it's really about growth in debate, you want to be the person that you can trust as, hey, I can do this thing. I know I can do this thing. And so I'm going to do this thing. If the result doesn't come favorably to you, you can at least know that you're a more confident person than when you started debate. All right, so that's the end of the slideshow. I am totally open to any questions, and I'm glad to ask or hear any of your opinions about what you think debate is to you. I can stop the recording if anyone wants me to not record them or their opinions or anything like that, but I would love to hear from you all.